men talking fantasy football. It is week 17. It is the Waivers show. We are ready for championship week in fantasy football. I'm here with Mr. Anthony Perez and Mr. Tom Lang, the three men talking fantasy football. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Wonderful.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm in the holiday spirit.
Holiday spirit today, even for those of us who've been horrifically eliminated. Eliminated from our leagues. In various different leagues that we have. I know that I've been eliminated. Tommy's been eliminated basically from everything except one. I've been eliminated from everything except one. Anthony was eliminated from everything except one. Or
Yes.
Have you been fully everything except one?
That's great content right there.
Yeah, but we all made it to the semis before this. So, very, very good otherwise.
I'm fighting for the championship.
Sometimes, when your opponent has every single player hit in multiple leagues, you're just not going to come back from it. So I had the misfortune of going against guys like James Cook and Brian Thomas in my multiple leagues. So that's nice. But we will try to arm everybody with the best knowledge for week 17. There's definitely some varying strategies that we're going to talk about this week. So let's jump right into it. So before we jump right into the names specifically, we should just outline that.
Really, I will say this real quick, just to cut in. I know some people have actually been eliminated from championship contention, but there is points. So we are still fighting for points. There is relevance. Everybody should be sitting their lineup still. Depending on your league, it could be first place, second place, third place, fourth place. Who knows? There could even be a point perspective league. So, points are obviously a huge element, and we all need to really take initiative and keep setting our lineups.
Yeah, and also to Tommy's point too, it's especially for people maybe they got eliminated or whatever. Maybe it's easy to check out, but if you want to try to be good for next year, you got to try to stay engaged, and you got to try to stay locked in towards the end of this season, obviously, and keep an eye on things and into the off season, which we might mention a little bit at the end of this show. But all right, so let's jump right in. So for week 17, we just want to point out that there is no tomorrow. There's no more speculation. There's no more speculative ads. It's just who is going to help you on your team this week and who on your team is going to be a denial from your opponents, what they might need. So to that point, there's no more handcuffs needed. So we'll point out some of that stuff as we go on. So let's talk drop candidates. We keep kind of bringing them up every week. We think that a lot of these people might be halfway checked out, but in case you thought any of these guys were going to come back, let's just run through the names real quick. David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, CMC, Nick Chubb, and Austin Eckler, all of which are on IR.
Got to cut you off. J.K. Dobbins is designated to return from IR, so he might be playing this week.
This week?
Yeah.
It can't because it wasn't within the 4-week period.
He's designated to return from IR this week.
From practice or just from
He's designated to return from IR this week.
Okay. Maybe I saw conflicting reports about that because he was placed on IR. Not maybe they did it right before the game on the other thing. Okay, we'll double check that.
Yeah, he's designated to return from IR this week. I saw a report. And he might play this week, and honestly, they could just go right back to him.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about that because we have a name or two on here that is related to that. So we'll put a pin in that. But the other guys, they're not coming back for this week. So Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, CMC, you could just say goodbye to. And like we said earlier, like if you have a healthy starting running back, you don't need to keep any of their handcuffs. So for championship week, you don't need to keep Algier anymore, Ray Davis, Ken Gainwell, Singletary. You don't need to keep any of these guys. You got their starters. You're rocking and rolling. You don't need to deny them from your opponent. So to that point, let's just jump right into the probably owned category. So Jerome Ford, if by some miracle he's still on your waiver wires, go ahead and pick him up. It's self-explanatory. The last 2 weeks, he's 18 for 176 and 2 touchdowns, 7 catches and 59 yards. He's been great in Nick Chubb's absence, and I don't know why they don't just give him the ball every play. But maybe they just don't want to win. They're going to tank for the rest of the season. Um, Tajay Spears with Pollard being banged up, and I know Tommy wishes he could have played him this past week. With Pollard banged up and in and out of games, he's stepping in really nicely. The last 2 games, he has 2 touchdowns in each game and 9 catches total, obviously along with the rushing baseline. And then I'll be interested to get both of your opinion on this. So I wasn't aware of the Dobbins situation
Yeah.
because on this probably owned list is Gus Edwards. He had a great game for fantasy. He
So
finally did.
so just
Let me just
yeah.
set the table. I'll let you go. So he had a great game for fantasy, and his matchup this week is great. After James Cook just destroyed the ever loving crap out of the New England Patriots, so I would have said let's rock and roll with Gus Edwards this week, and obviously we could forget about Vidal. That's not even a thing. But go ahead. What's your pontificate about this here?
So, yeah, Gus Edwards looked okay, but they give him all the ball. They give him the ball the entire time. He had 14 for 68, 2 touchdowns, and then did he have one? He didn't have one receiving touchdown, but I mean, they gave him the ball as much as we thought that, or I thought, and Anthony believed that Vidal was going to get the ball. Um, I don't see that happening again. Also, J.K. Dobbins. It's so there are obviously are speculations that he potentially could return this week. It says basically he could return week 17 against the Patriots. He does have incentives to be paid within the season too, so those incentives could actually draw him back to want to play more. His incentives he gets in each of these incentives, you get 150K each if he thresholds 900 to 1,500, 1,050 yards, and he's sitting at basically 766 yards. So 140 yards he could hit basically to get those incentives. And that's basically for the next 2 weeks. So, he basically could come back this week and have 60 yards, 60 yards, 70 yards, 70 yards, and pretty much hit his targets. So I think that he does come back this week because of those incentives.
Do you think you think it's that motivated to come back just for the incentives, and you think he comes
Yeah, I
right
mean,
back in and takes
yeah,
the load?
he might come back. I mean, it might be a share, but I think he's going to
Right.
get some good. He'll get some good, yardage within the 20s. I mean,
Okay.
they're playing against the Patriots,
I'll tell you.
so
Well, that's true, and yeah, like we just said, James Cook just eviscerated them on the ground this
well, yeah. I
past
mean,
week.
it took almost a full half to actually eviscerate them, but that that
Well,
that was that, that was ridiculous.
the Patriots give up the fourth most rushing yards in the NFL this year. So, I mean, the matchup on paper is amazing going into
I,
this week.
Yeah,
I mean, do
I
you
mean,
think? I mean, do you both think, like to your point, if Dobbins is actually back, and like I said, I'm floored by that news. But if he's actually back, do they not just vulture? There's no way that he just pushes him right in after Gus Edwards' game. It's going to be a
I,
vulture situation, is it
I
not?
mean,
I
I
mean,
see it being like a Chiefs situation with Pacheco and Hunt if he
which
actually
isn't
does
good.
play.
well,
I just can't see. I mean, me personally can't see them giving him 100% workload right off the bat,
no,
first game back.
and
And I think it'll be a 50-50 split, if anything.
yeah, and I don't think I might be less than that, but I think he's going to get those carries inside the 20 instead of between the 20s instead of those goal line carries are going to be Gus Edwards, where he's going to get those tougher yards to get closer. He's a full forward back. He's not your. He's literally going to get tackled he's going to get hit at the yard at what you call it when he gets the ball and he's going to fall forward 4 yards. That's what he's getting. So, I mean, I think the better back is Dobbins, even though, this wasn't a significant injury. It was significant enough to put him on IR, but I think it was just to force him to have to rest for a period of time.
Maybe it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up, and also like if you have to rely on a LA Chargers running back in
Well,
championship week, I mean, I
I
feel like
would,
there might be better options.
yeah, but I would say, don't set your lineup until, the week comes. I mean, obviously that game's on a Saturday. So you have an opportunity to go through 3 games before that, and there's valuable running backs at that point to basically, make a decision on. And then you have Sunday and Monday. So there's a lot of football, a lot of days of football. this week. But if you're in a LA Chargers situation where you have Edwards and then you also have Dobbins, and if Dobbins is ready to go and he's healthy, you have to start Dobbins. You have to over Edwards.
I, I wouldn't want to start either of them if that's the case. But again,
But if you're forced between, if that's your RB2, you'll be forced to. I really feel like you have to lean to Dobbins over.
It's such
over
a juicy. It's such a juicy matchup. All right, let's see. We'll see how the practice reports play out. People should pay attention to that. Another couple names here. So Kendre Miller, if he's available on your waiver wire, it's worth a pickup. But let's caveat that. So he did not have a good game against Green Bay at all. But
nobody
it's
had
not
a good game.
Yeah, but it's not like New Orleans was threatening to do anything offensively with their quarterback situation going against a good defense. But this is actually worth it talking about the drop candidates. So this coming week, if Kamara's out, you could go ahead and drop him, obviously, because he's not going to help your team. And if Kamara's out, though, Kendre Miller is probably a decent enough low-end running back to play at home against Las Vegas. But if Kamara's in and he's playing, then just drop Kendre Miller at that point. So you got some space for your roster chance here. And, obviously if Kamara's in, you're playing him. So, all right, let's go to two more names here. And this one I'd be very curious to see Anthony's opinion on. So they're probably owned players, and both of whom had good games this past week. The both of whom I'd be petrified to play this week in championship week, given their matchup. It's in the same game. We're talking about Kareem Hunt and we're talking about Jaylen Warren, the quote unquote running back twos for their team. I would be petrified to play them, but I know that if I'm going to drop them, they're going to get picked up immediately. How do you play Jaylen Warren and Kareem Hunt here?
Well, I'll speak on Kareem Hunt. He had a pretty good game this week because he had the touchdown. If I have better options, I'm probably sitting him. So, for example, if I were to play this week, I have Tajay Spears and Kareem Hunt both on my bench. I'd probably, if I had to pick one of the two, I'd probably start Tajay Spears over Kareem Hunt this week. That backfield situation is just still, it's clear it's still 50-50 split, and you're kind of touchdown dependent with Kareem Hunt, which he got this past week, but will he get this week, And in championship week, you just can't really take that chance. You want sure things in your lineup, and I just don't see him as a sure thing to actually score, produce enough fantasy points to make a difference. But I mean, points are points regardless.
I mean, I'll take the Jaylen Warren if you're not going to take that one.
Go ahead, yeah.
I honestly think Jaylen Warren is a nice flex play this week. He basically had 12. He had targets. He had 17 targets last week against Baltimore. Yes, were they playing from behind? But I think it's going to be pretty much the same script. So, 12. He's had 12 rushing attempts for 48 yards. And then basically had five targets, 5 receptions for 44 yards. So if he fell in the end zone, then that would have turned into a good game. But basically, I mean, he had 9.2 points. It's a decent flex day. If he scored a touchdown, because Najee Harris is not looking like Najee Harris from 5-6 weeks ago. He's slowing down. Watching. I mean, he's making some good plays, but he's not as explosive as he was in the beginning of the season.
Jaylen Warren is the ultimate floor play. He's going to get you whatever it is, 7, 8, 9, 10 points, and then that's it.
But that's good though. I mean, but that's flex. That's flex worthy right there.
That's fine. But I would say, to your point, it probably depends on your matchup this week. So if you need to get more than that, then you're not going to get it out of Jaylen Warren. So if I'm the heavy favorite, I'll rock and roll with Jaylen Warren. But no way I'm doing that if I have to need a little more oomph.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, kind of like my Michael Penix situation. I thought he was going to go nuclear, and I apologize for that. But it is what it is. I was hoping for a explosion, which it was scripted for an explosion. He did have a good NFL day. And Kyle Pitts really fumbled that ball for that interception. But I mean, I think there was maybe like 1 or 2 people that listened to me on that, and I apologize for those 1 or 2 people.
Well,
Yeah, I
well,
mean,
well, well,
I will say any of these running backs, there's always potential if they break off a long run, an 80-yard touchdown, it's going to get you points, but you can't go into a game depending on that and hoping on that. Whereas like if you had a Saquon, Derrick Henry, where you're going to get the production you're going to get out of them, it's a sure thing. Like Kareem Hunt's averaged what 4 points the last 3 weeks up until this past week.
right.
But
It's
I agree with you, Anthony.
let's just say that you have these four running backs and you're trying to plug in one for a flex, or you're trying to plug in one for an RB2. You have Gus Edwards. I'd say Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are kind of the same scenario right there. So you lean towards one of those if you're just going running back from the Chargers. But you say you have both Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Then you also have Jalen Warren and you have Alexander Madison. Who do you start?
Alexander Madison at the bottom of the list.
Mm-hmm.
But if I need the floor play, Jalen Warren. If I need more of a ceiling, because the Chargers, like we said, they're going to eviscerate the Patriots on the ground. So it's just a question of maybe Gus Edwards ended up with 2 touchdowns or something. You know what I mean? Like, so that's my logic there.
Yeah, mine is I go with the Chargers backfield. Whoever's going, if Dobbins is back, I'm starting him, and then I go Warren and then Madison.
Okay.
And what do you do?
I agree with that. I'd go Chargers first, Madison obviously last, and in the middle probably Warren.
Yeah, I mean
Well,
that game itself too. The Raiders New Orleans game is going to be fantastic. I think it's going to be
well,
disgusting.
we'll talk about that game. Well, actually, let's parlay that in. Let's parlay that into that game. So let's talk about the more widely owned guys. So we basically only have 2 backfields to talk about in the widely owned category. That's the the Raiders and the Broncos. Let's talk about the Raiders. So Amir Abdullah and Alexander Madison. Let's start with Abdullah. I will, I've been so dismissive of the Abdullah situation, rightfully so. But at this point, I can't deny fantasy production. Forget about every other metric. Just fantasy production, I can't deny it. Since McCormick went down, he's had a touchdown in each of the last 2 games, 12 catches total. Obviously, a nice little rushing baseline. And this final week here, they're going to be at New Orleans.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, he's RB19 the last 6 weeks.
I know it's just such an ugly play, Amir Abdullah. And I mean, even Alexander Madison's on our board. He had a nice game along with Abdullah last week. If I had to start a Raiders running back, it's going to be Abdullah. It's not going to be Madison this coming week. I mean, I guess Madison's an emergency play, but I guess Abdullah.
You know what's crazy about it is that Amir Abdullah is ranked higher than Derrick Henry the last 6 weeks.
Right. Well, that's going to change this week.
I know it's going to change.
I will say this about Abdullah. I think in terms of, well, the only way I'd probably start Abdullah is a flex, and that's if I'm in a full point PPR league. Because I just feel like he's so much more valuable in a PPR format. If it's a non-PPR format, you probably have to go Madison in that situation, unfortunately, just because, Abdullah's known for the pass catching role, and Madison it doesn't catch. He's a straight rusher. So I guess it really just depends on which format you're playing and what your league setup is.
Yeah.
To the Denver backfield. So Estime is widely available. Obviously, Javonte is very, very widely owned. With Sarah McLaughlin's injury now, it's basically a full timeshare between the two. Yeah. Thankfully, Peyton's not going to some third back that we don't know the name of.
Well,
so
he had the third back, number 25. I forget his name, but he actually had some good runs.
Yes, but it's mostly, thank God, it's mostly these guys.
I know it's mostly, but I mean there is relevance with that guy, but I don't think you could start any of them.
That's what I was about to say. I'm like, they're on the list because in an emergency, if you have to pick up somebody, Estime's there. But we'll get to it at some point when we talk about the matchups. But just sit the Denver backs. I mean,
Blake Watson is the third running back over there. I mean, he looked good, but I mean, he's older. He's older than Audric Estime and also right. Javonte Williams. He's 25 years old.
I mean, we thought McLaughlin looked great. I mean, so I mean, it's a product. Their offense looks good.
Yeah, they run a three-headed monster pretty much all the time, and it just I mean, if you're going into week 17 championship week
Relying on
and
Audric Estime
and
and Javonte
you're
Williams.
relying on the running backs of the Denver Broncos, you ain't sleeping.
If I had to pick up a back who was widely owned, it's going to be Abdullah, and I ignore the rest of them. But again, we're bringing it up for the sake of brevity for people who listen.
I think we need to bring back Philip Lindsay.
Oh.
Yeah,
That guy.
that dude. That was he was the greatest running back of all time for the Denver Broncos before
for 1 year.
for 1 year. And then he went to the Colts and they destroyed him.
All right, so before we move on to wide receivers, let's just reiterate that you could go ahead and drop your handcuffs, your Algiers, your Ray Davises, Singletary, etc. So let's move on to wide receivers. Let's start with some drop candidates. I'll leave the first name on our list to the end because I know that was contentious last week. So let's start. So Tank Dell had his greatest game.
It was amazing.
Of the entire year.
It was amazing. Until that
unbelievable.
happened.
I haven't had, after dropping him, rightfully so, earlier this year, having done nothing. He has an amazing game. He showed why he's as talented as he is, but he's done for the year, and he might be done for next year, depending on how severe.
And we did find out that he is CJ Stroud's best friend. Best friend.
Well, hey,
best friend.
Good for them.
That's good to look into next year.
If he even plays next year, I'd be worried about it.
Yeah.
Chris Olave, he's not coming back, and even if he does, he's walking into the Rattler Hayner situation. Let him go. You don't need to keep him on your team. Tyler Lockett, we say it every week, but he's over 50% owned in every league. Let him go. It's just not happening. He's past his prime.
Over.
And then my favorite pick on here, Amari Cooper. I don't want to see his name again. Ever. He's done.
Amari Cooper.
Amari Cooper. Let him go. There's too many mouths to feed in Buffalo. It's too inconsistent. You're gonna hate it every time that you put him in your lineup. Let him go.
Yep.
Just to put one catch this past week, and the week before he had a big fat 0. Let him go.
I'll be honest. I think that was just literally a panic trade by the Bills after the Jets acquired Devontae Adams. I think that they saw Adams was picked up. It was still early in the year that year, so the Jets weren't technically out of it. And they were like, oh, shoot, what do we got to do? And that's all that was, because he's served no purpose on the Bills. And it's actually kind of
except
incredible.
The first game that he got there, really.
Yeah, but it's actually kind of incredible because the guy's so talented. You know what I mean? So I almost feel like he was still better off in Cleveland for some reason.
And then the 14th and then the 14 target game. I told you. I was like, don't chase it. He had 14 targets. 6 receptions. Catches. Like, come on, dude. Like, Josh Allen was like, yeah, I can't throw this guy the ball because he can't catch it.
Yeah. All right, so last name on the list, we kind of talked about it last week. So Jalen Waddle and Tommy, Anthony, interesting for you to weigh in on this. Tommy and I got contentious about it. My argument was Jalen Waddle was probably not going to play last week, and even if he comes back, it's going to be for one game, and he's going to be off an injury. And he didn't end up playing last week, and now this coming week, it looks like he's not going to play anyway. But let's pretend for the sake of argument he does play. I don't know how you play him. So therefore,
going against San Francisco, I'm probably not playing him, to be honest with you.
He's at Cleveland.
Cleveland, yeah. San Francisco was this week. Sorry. I don't know. Coming off an injury, I think it's a knee injury too. I probably look to something else if I have an option. Plus, I mean, if you look at Tyreek's numbers, right? Yeah, he had a decent week last week, but they're not his numbers that he's usually putting up. 6 catches for over 100 yards and a touchdown. It's 2 catches, 21 yards, and a touchdown. For some reason, they're better off running the ball in Miami, and I think they're going to stick to that script as long as they can. I mean, A-Chain's killing it right now. Especially Waddle not playing last week with a knee injury. I'm probably not playing him this week.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. And then therefore drop him. That's it. Yeah. Let's move on to guys you can play. So in the probably owned category, we got 2 names for you. We got Josh Downs. Welcome back. He had a nice game. He only did it on 4 targets, so tread with some level of caution. But and Pierce was out. Richardson is getting better. It's taking a while, but he is getting better. So it's worth noting that his number one target is downs. So number one target on a team in which he's getting better, go for it. And also the matchups this week, the Colts are at the Giants, so you can rock a roll there. And Adam, Mr. Legacy Thielen, he had a bounce back game, and he's got a nice matchup this week as well. Fire him up with confidence. They're at Tampa Bay, and Carolina's been playing great. So
Yeah, and he's I mean I don't think I think this is last year. Like I said, he's playing for legacy.
playing for
Um,
legacy.
but Carolina Panthers had a good game. They beat the Cardinals last week, and they took the Cardinals out of playoff contention,
Yep.
which Mr. McBride was not happy about, as you saw him walking off the field.
Yep.
I actually want to throw one in here, just so
Sure.
I know we don't have this guy on here, and I want to give Anthony some nice props with this one. Um, but Marquise Brown, he, I would look at him this week.
For
Yeah, I
one
would
for one
pick him up.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Tommy 100%. Fire him up.
And the reason behind that is he was heavily targeted for, not heavily targeted, but like for a player that's coming back, off an injury, hasn't played all year with Patrick Mahomes. He was targeted, and I think this is a game where he can score a touchdown. I think he could get anywhere from 5 to 6 targets for those big old back in the day Tyreek Hill plays, and have a long touchdown, and that he could end up as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver, like low end wide receiver 1 this week. Now, also, I'd look at that as if you guys are in keeper leagues too, I would definitely pick him up as a keeper opportunity. Something like that could really help you prep for next year. Seeing that DeAndre Hopkins is, aging, he's basically taking the role of Travis Kelce, in the red zone to an extent. I think that he's a good option to target, potentially play this week, but looking for more of a future aspect of it.
I agree with Tommy. I mean, he had 8 targets this past week in his first game back. Yeah, that just goes to show they were looking to get him the ball. They wanted him to be a part of that offense. He looked good too on the field. Doesn't look like he's slowing down at all. So I think he's a good flex play this week, 100%. I think they're going to continue to try to get him the ball. Like Tommy said, he has that potential always for that big play downfield.
Yep.
That's what he was known for on the Ravens. So I'm picking him up, and I'm probably playing him this week, especially in a situation like myself, um, with my wide receiver situation. But I will say I do have a lot of frustration with the Chiefs right now because I don't know why it took them 16 weeks to finally realize, oh, let's get Xavier Worthy really involved in this offense. And Patrick Mahomes was praising him this week and singing his great, all this stuff about him. Like, man, I just wish they turned that leaf many, many weeks ago after all my receivers got hurt, especially. But, it's going to be a situation where it's almost like the Bills. They're going to have a ton of mouths to feed. You got to be careful with that because Rashee Rice comes back next year. Then you have Marquise Brown. You got Xavier Worthy. I feel like if they win the championship, I think Kelsey's going to retire. That's just my opinion. If they don't, he might come back and chase one more. I don't know. I feel like if they win, he's definitely out. And like Tommy said with Hopkins, I don't think he's there next year either.
I, I I agree with the both of you. I would say it'll be an interesting conversation in the offseason. I mean, I've had my doubts in general about Hollywood Brown, and again, we'll save that for the offseason about like how he's performed in past years and stuff and his trials and tribulations. We'll get to that. But in terms of week 17, if you can play him, I won't deny anything you guys said. I would say I'm slightly more cautious than that. You can't just chase a guy coming right in and maybe he's getting some targets or whatever. There's a lot of mouths to feed, as Anthony pointed out. But if you guys are, if you put it this way, he's definitely in the shoot higher category. He's not in the Jalen Warren, like lower floor. So if you need to shoot for it, go for it. All right. So in the more widely available wide receiver category here. Okay. Our top pickup of the week, Jalen McMillions. He has been great. So this is 3 straight weeks. I mean, we talked about him last week. We talked about throwing him right in. I might have even been slightly cautious. I mean, and I think I was even a little bit too conservative about what I was saying about him. But let's just say, I mean, the last 3 games have been awesome. 4 for 59, 2 touchdowns. 5 for 75 and a touchdown. 5 for 57 and a touchdown. And Baker's dealing. He's been great. He's completely usurped the number 2 wide receiver situation there. He
You
looks
mean
great.
you mean Baker's cooking?
Baker's cooking, very good, and he just looked great. And they got an amazing matchup this week. They're home against Carolina. What more could you want? Pick up Jalen
Well,
McMillan, rock and roll. I mean,
I don't think it's amazing. I think it's a good matchup. I mean, the last time they played Carolina, it was a tough game.
it was
There
a
was
tough game, like defense, meaning like they almost lost, but
yeah,
offensively, like Carolina has no defense.
No, that's
yeah,
not true. Baker struggled in that game because I had him
yeah.
and I played him, and he did nothing for me against
Well,
Carolina. So,
I
and on
will I
paper,
will
this
I
is
s-
a great
I think
matchup.
this will be a back. I think this will
yeah,
be a
I
bounce
mean,
back.
and McMillan, he's been averaging anywhere from 6 to 7 targets the past 3 weeks. Like we said, I really think he's taken over the Godwin role over there, which is cutting into Kate Otton's production. And so I would lean to, I would lean to say that McMillan is a wide receiver to play this week.
Which means roll with them. I mean, you have
Yeah.
to start 2 wide receivers.
He's
Um,
got 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's 14
right.
of 20, 14 catches and 20 targets for 191 yards in that stretch. So Baker's definitely targeting him. It's good to see him because McMillan has always had that potential and was supposed to be that guy. I think everyone expected him to be that guy as soon as Godwin went down, which
Took a
wasn't the
while.
case, and that's where Otten stepped in. But it's good to see him doing it now, though.
Yeah.
And I think that honestly makes a huge um, difference because Godwin, I believe, is a free agent this year after this season. So they're going to have some big decisions to make, especially if McMillan keeps playing like he is. Do they let Godwin walk and sign somewhere else?
I
I
think
think
it, I think
McMillan.
it's smart.
I think McMillan is a second round pick too, if I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
I mean,
cheap.
he was
something
up
like
there.
that. Yeah. So I mean, he's going to be good going forward too. I mean, Evan's not going to play forever. So I mean, yeah, he's great. Um, so the only other names that that we have on here is so the Washington wide receiver situation. So even in the face of a great defense, Jaden Daniels went out and crushed it. And it should be noted that Washington's passing game is going to be great. So Noah Brown's already on IR. Diami Brown went down to a hamstring. He's not going to play this week. So that leaves the receiver 2 situation wide open for Washington. So we could I mean, I purposely left out Luke McCaffrey because he didn't do anything. And also, if he wasn't Christian McCaffrey's brother, he'd be irrelevant to the sake of this conversation. So let's just leave him out of it unless you guys think it's egregious. I know Tommy hates this. We're gonna move on with that.
I
But the
think
the two.
that's a little too big of a stab right there, but
I, all right, let's
okay.
bring up the 2 names that actually did something. So that's Olamide Zacchaeus and Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder, who's like 1,000 years old. He's been on 18 different teams. But
He's been,
Zacchaeus,
Jet,
but he always comes back to the Redskins.
Mr. Jet.
right? They're actually the Commanders, but moving on.
Commanders, Redskins, whatever you want to call them.
I
Yeah.
loved
So
him when he was on the Jets. I really did.
target machine when he was there. So Zacchaeus this past week, so he went 5 for 8, 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Crowder 2 for 4, 15 yards and 2 touchdowns. If it's me, if I need a shot and I need to go get a lot of points, it's going to be Zacchaeus. I'd be more afraid of Crowder just on the sake of just age and the way in which, and also Zacchaeus looked great. I can't
I
deny
mean,
it.
I think they have an easier matchup this week. I will say
They're at
this.
home against Atlanta.
Well, also, so Zacchaeus used to play for Atlanta. He was drafted by Atlanta, I think.
Revenge narrative.
I don't think it's
It's
revenge
our
narrative,
favorite
but I
thing.
do think that he scores a touchdown this week. But I think it all goes back to Zach Ertz and Scary Terry this week.
Well, we'll talk about Zach Ertz, who I was amazed that he actually played this week. I know it was kind of like up and down to the end of the year, but yeah. Is there any thoughts you want to throw towards Luke McCaffrey, or we could just let that lie for week
Probably let
17?
that go.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I'm waiting for Tommy to get mad at it, but we're moving on.
That's fine. That's fine.
All
He's
right.
just Christian McCaffrey's brother.
Let's wait.
You know, he had a father that was a great wide receiver as well. But
I'm just making the point is nobody would bring him up for fantasy ever if other than his lineage.
Well, if we're talking about players on a depth of a receiving core, we have to talk Luke McCaffrey because he
All
was
right.
drafted by that team for a reason.
Yeah, he
I
was.
think
You're right.
to put a button on it, I think Zacchaeus is a decent shot if you need to pick somebody up off the waiver wire.
I do
All right,
have one question for you
Oh,
guys.
sure.
Are we back on the NWI train after a touchdown this week?
Oh,
Yeah. Well, I think the fantasy football
Anthony,
world
I didn't
can't
put him
rel-
in the show doc.
I know.
I think the fantasy football world cannot rely on NWI and unfortunately.
Guys got 9 touchdowns on the year, though.
Yeah. Well, unless he's going to score 2 this week, he ain't helping you.
Anthony, I swear to you, I'm filling out the show doc and I'm like, do I have to put his name in here again? Do I have to? I'm like, you know what? They're not going to bring him up. They're not going to say anything. There's no way they're going to say
No,
something
he scored, man.
on cue.
He's back on the radar.
Oh, all right. Yeah, he's on the radar, all right, and I will not be playing him. I will not be playing him this week. Oh my gosh! All right, let's move on.
If you had NWI and Zacchaeus, who would you rather play, Zacchaeus or NWI?
This week is probably Zacchaeus, the wide receiver
revenge
two,
game?
the wide receiver 2 for Washington, or the wide receiver 2 for
Really?
Tennessee. Yeah,
I don't know. Who does I think doesn't NWI have Jacksonville coming up? Pretty good
Tennessee.
matchup.
The Tennessee is
Yep.
against Jacksonville, right?
It's
But
at Jacksonville too.
well, in terms of target, like we'll talk about a particular guy on Tennessee. We'll get to him, and let's parlay that. So let's talk about tight ends here. So let's start with some drop candidates. I've got at the top of the list. This one's going to be contentious probably. So I got Dalton Kincaid. I've been talking about him as a drop candidate the past couple weeks. The problem is it has nothing to do with his talent, and I like Dalton Kincaid, but there's just too many mouths to feed in Buffalo. He's not getting enough work, and you're going to rely on him to get you like tight end 14 numbers in championship week. He hasn't had a good game since week 8. I got it. He was injured for 3 or 4 games in there.
Yeah, he was injured for a significant period of time.
But how do you look at him as like, hey, I'm going to play him with confidence? Like,
because he's better than Amari Cooper.
I mean, that's not saying much. So I think you could do way better.
He right now is a streaming tight end. That's what he is. I mean, but going
Right.
against the Jets, I think that going against the Jets, it might be a good play.
I mean, we thought he might have been a good play at New England. I mean, but it wasn't.
No. That was all day running day for them.
Okay, it was, but I mean, I remember you very high on the Kincaid situation.
Yeah, I'll be high on Kincaid every week.
All right.
Somebody I won't be high on is basically
Kyle
Pitts.
Pitts.
That guy, he destroys worlds. He's the world destroyer.
I think he might be one of the biggest busts in the last couple of years. I think
he's the worst tight end.
I don't think it's him though. I think it's the system that he's in. I guarantee you, if he goes somewhere else, he's probably putting up some numbers. I mean, they just don't look to get him the ball.
You watched that game, Anthony. I mean,
wait, I didn't watch the Falcons this past weekend. No,
he is
oh my gosh,
disgusting.
It was bad. I mean, even
and you have to look back because that interception from my boy Michael Penix, Kyle Pitts literally had the ball like this. He didn't make a full football move, but he was like, here you go. Literally gave the ball to the defender. And I'm a Giants fan. I'm happy about like the Giants making that play, but I'm even more happy that they lost.
You should, Anthony, if you want a good laugh this week, just go watch those. Just go watch those highlights.
Watch that play.
It's not, Anthony. For many years I wanted to think like, it's a system, it's Arthur Smith, or it's whatever quarterback play or whatever. It's him. It's not anybody else.
You're right.
It's that
Yeah.
it's literally that song from our favorite person in the world. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. I'm Kyle Pitts.
Some other drop candidates. Kate Otten at this point, he hasn't been good, and he's got the injury consideration. Let him go. Don't bother for week 17.
Yeah.
It is what it is. He burned too bright for 3 games, whatever it was.
Well, yeah, it's because McMillan has taken over the targets.
And then, if you still have them on your team, Evan Ingram and Dallas Goedert, they're still widely owned. They're on IR. They're not coming back for week 17. Let them go.
Yeah, let him go.
All right. In the probably owned category, some guys you could, if they're there, go ahead. To my detriment, Dalton Schultz is on this list. He had a great game. And with Dell's injury, he could be poised. I can't even believe I'm saying this. He could be poised to lead you to victory, especially there versus Baltimore at home. He's going to be great.
He's the new Will Disley.
Yeah, I should tell you everything. Tell you everything you need to know. He's going to have a great game, and then he's going to get injured at some point. Zach Ertz, if he's on your waiver wire, again, he had a bad game coming off the concussion situation, but it's a great match in week 17 at home against Atlanta. And to Tommy's point, if he thinks targets are going to, especially with the Dimey Brown injury, if you don't think Zacchaeus is going to get everything, then it'll go back to Zach Ertz as Jaden Daniels wheels and deals against Atlanta. And Tucker Kraft, if he's available, go ahead. He had a decent game this past week, and now with Watson is looking like he's going to be out. They got a big showdown in Minnesota. They're going to need him. They're going to need to throw the ball. Like Anthony, I know we talked about this last week. Like Jordan Love's not going to be able to just kind of floor his game in this game. They're going to have to put up points to beat the Vikings. So they're going to throw the ball. Tucker Kraft could be a great option in week 17.
I probably feel more comfortable starting Hunter Henry over Tucker Kraft this week.
Well, let's talk about him. So the next two guys have been like on our list in terms of probably owned, but pick them up category for a while. And to get two names on here. So Hunter Henry and Jake Ferguson. Hunter Henry, he had a bounce back game. He's the only reliable pass catching option in New England. However, this is a bad matchup. They're about to be playing the Chargers after the Chargers have a 10-day rest after the Chargers had that big win on last Thursday. I'd be completely petrified to play Henry here. Am I wrong, Anthony?
No, you're not wrong. But I think that some people might be in a position where they have to play him. And honestly, going into week 17, I don't know, if he's been your starter for majority of the year, well, let me break down some stats. He's had average 7 targets, 6 receptions, and 50 receiving yards per game since Drake May has become the starter. Those are essentially wide receiver 1 numbers if he were a wide receiver. He is their top option in New England. There's no doubt about that. Maybe you could pick up one of these streamer guys if Henry is your starting tenant. I don't like the matchup, but I think you have to play him just because of his consistent production alone.
Okay. The other name in that category so Jake Ferguson, he's probably owned. I mean, we always talk about targets are king, and he had a kind of a slight bounce back game. He went 6 for 40 this past week on 9 targets. So the thing is with him, though, he's getting targets every single game, and that's the most important thing. But at some point, you need production with these targets, and he has just not been doing so. This is another game, and now Dallas is at Philadelphia. Cooper Rush is not Jaden Daniels. They're not going to do what the Washington just did to Philly. So I'd be petrified of playing him. I think if you're not going to play him, I think he's a good drop as a landmine for teams. What do you think, Tommy?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The only issue that I have here is that Jalen Hurts might be out for this game. So that's going to lean more to running the ball on both sides, which I think that if Cooper Rush, it could open the field a little bit more for Cooper Rush. Now, like if we're talking about quarterbacks right now, I really think that, somebody, the highest, let me just put it this way. The people that are in the championship right now or in high point contention have a valid quarterback and not worrying about streaming a quarterback right now. Having said that, the 6th ranked on the season quarterback could potentially be out. So you need to find a streamer this week for you to get the championship win. I do believe that Cooper Rush could be a decent play this week over what you pretty much would have on the the waiver wire. I do like Cooper Rush this week. I also like
And so therefore you think Ferguson is okay, you're saying.
yeah, I think that's a good play right there.